Good morning. This is going to be my final expo video of the year, and there's actually only 30 seconds of content that I shot at expo in this video. The rest of it is going to be an actual DIY garage video with a little bit of welding action. And I am totally not in my driveway. This is a beautiful campsite out in nature. That's not my neighbor's house you see in the background. This video revolves around a product that caught my eye at expo, sort of an innovative new way to start a campfire that I had never seen before. Now I know that inevitably is going to trigger debate on what is the proper way to start a campfire, whether or not you're a mountain man who shaves down bits of wood that you find and sparks it with flint and steel, or you use a propane torch. Ultimately, that's not what this video is about. So let's just take a look at this. This is a brand new company with a brand new product.
Hey, Colin Toole here with Spark Infinite Firestarter. This is the easiest and last fire starter you'll ever need. Simply set this wherever you want to make a fire, pour 10 ounces of rubbing alcohol, CVS, Walgreens, Target, whatever, stack your logs on top and then light it. It's going to live at the bottom of your fire. You just keep throwing big logs on top of it. Next day, next week, whatever, when you want to reuse it, toss the ash out, refill it, and go again. It costs $59 retail, and if you want, you can go to our website, sparkfirestarter.com, and we'll be delivering in October.
I know. You could make this yourself in your garage with $5 of material in about 2 hours, right? Anytime I post any kind of product that's made out of metal, somehow it always brings out the fabricators who swear that they could make it for a fraction of what it costs to buy it. The question is it really worth going to the trouble to figure out the design, get the materials, do the work of putting it together to save a relatively small amount of money? We'll take a look at that just a little later in this video. I always like to see new ideas, new innovative approaches to getting something done. Obviously, there are a lot of different ways you can start a campfire. You can certainly get a fire going without buying a $60 device. But this is interesting in that it provides a much longer burn time than most other types of materials you might be using to start a fire, whether you've purchased some sort of commercial fire starter or whether you're, just using shavings and tinder or some kind of DIY fire starter like I use. And I have certainly done the thing where I make little wood shavings like certain other YouTube adventurers that we know. But the way I typically start my campfires is I make my own little fire starters using little cotton makeup pads and Vaseline, and I just store them in a little plastic jar. I put a couple of those in there, light them up. They burn nicely for a little while, just enough to get some little bit bigger kindling and small bits and pieces of dry stuff going. That's been working reasonably well for me as long as the rest of the material I have is reasonably dry. When I get into situations where it's damp, my material is damp, it can be difficult to get a fire going. This is something that would provide you with a steady, consistent amount of flame regardless of what the conditions are. So as someone who camps in the winter and who camps in Western Oregon, that is something that particularly appealed to me about this product. But if it's not for you, that's fine. Don't buy it. But be nice. You don't have to be disparaging in the comments below. Now, as I said, just about any time I show some sort of a product that is made out of metal, there are always people who say they can make it themselves for so much cheaper. So I decided to actually go ahead and try it myself and see if it's worth messing with. So at first, I dug through my scrap metal in the garage to see if I had anything that I could possibly make work, but I just didn't have anything that was suitable. So I had to head over to the steel yard. Now, the time to drive there, poke around through the scraps and remnants, also talk to someone there because I didn't quite find exactly what I was after, get what I need, drive home, that was at least an hour of my time. My original thought was to get some kind of squared off channel that I could just, weld together into a cross. It seems that no one makes any kind of channel that isn't just super shallow like this. I was thinking, something that was a little bit deeper, also something that was lighter weight, but at the steel yard, they didn't have anything that was less than 1/8 of an inch thick, which is definitely heavier than I need. And, it's relatively shallow, especially for the weight. Another thought I had was to use some kind of angle metal, which if you put it together, like this, it forms this sort of channel. That could still be a way to go about it, but joining the pieces at the intersection seemed complicated. And at the steel yard, they also did not have anything that was less than 1/8 of an inch thick. So I talked to the guys there, And he confirmed, yeah, there's not channel that is thin metal that is, you know, got high sides like that. Because I was talking about, you know, possibly just using some tube and, you know, cutting the top off to get a nice channel of something that's lighter weight. And he was like, yeah, that's what you're going to have to do, basically. They did have some channel they had made themselves, which was actually bent sheet metal. So it formed into pretty much something like that, you know, didn't have the top, and it was a reasonable thickness of metal. But they only had that in 10-foot lengths, and that was going to be like $34 for a 10-foot length, which isn't terrible, but that was obviously way more material than I needed, and spending $35 on that would have really got me ridiculously close to the price of this product. So ultimately the conclusion was a couple of remnants of 1.5 inch tube. I am going to just cut the tops off. This is a little more than I needed, but these were pieces that they had, and it gives me a little margin of error. And this was a total of $6.70. Now, the reason I decided to tackle this project in the first place was to make the point that, yeah, you can DIY it, but is it necessarily worth the trouble and the expense when you can buy something that's already been engineered and already been put together? I'm actually going to try and make something that I can fit inside my Snow Peak fire pit, so I can actually use it to start fires in my fire pit. Okay, so there you can kind of see what I did. I did cut that out like that in order to make this tongue that will fold up. We'll weld it on like that to create the ends of that. And this is just obviously one piece, so I have to make the cross piece. And the really fun part is I have to take this whole piece off so that turns into a channel instead of tube. Okay, with that first piece made, and that wasn't too bad, cutting the roof off of that tube to make a channel, I think I can now use this as a template to make the cross piece, because I think they need to be just the same, and then we'll just have to figure out, you know, how they're going to intersect. Basically there. And I am going to just lightly score along the bottom there so that flap can bend up a little more easily, just very, very lightly, so to make sure that that's where it bends and not someplace else. Honestly, I have no idea if you're supposed to heat up steel before trying to bend it. It seems like it would make it easier to bend. I don't know if a little propane torch like this can make enough of a difference. You don't watch this channel for confidence, that's for sure. Did I just bend down right where I want it to? Oh yeah! Oh, look at that! I didn't get that quite straight enough, but okay. Okay, so what I've done here is I notched that completely out to allow the cross piece to go in there, but I left this intact. And then, since we only need the liquid to be able to flow through between the two arms, I just needed to cut some openings in here. So what I'm trying to do is minimize the amount of welds that need to be perfectly, you know, liquid tight. I mean, I guess they all need to be, but this way there's more surface up against surface. I think I can do a better job of welding that enough to hold liquid. I guess we will find out. Yeah, sits in there pretty good. Okay, so I started on this at 10:30 this morning. It is now 1:20, so that's about 3 hours today. That includes coming out here and just sort of like trying to wrap my mind around figuring out exactly how I was going to do this, making the cuts, making the bends, plus the hour of going to the steel yard and back. So I'm in it about 4 hours so far. For now, I'm gonna go have lunch, take a quick nap, and we'll get back at it. Okay, so here's a little update. I had lunch, had a quick nap, and then I responded to some emails for a while. Ended up stopping for 2 hours. Came back out at 3:30 and went right to welding on this, and I've just finished sort of cleaning up some of the welds with the grinder, and it is now a little after 6 o'clock, so another 2.5 hours. I ended up having a little difficulty where this flap of metal here, where I folded it up, welding those joints there ended up being a little trickier than I expected. They just wanted to sort of burn out those edges. I did eventually find a technique of just sort of like spot welding and then going back through and spotting some more, which would not be a acceptable technique, I know, on something that's structural in any way, but this doesn't need any strength at all. It just needs to hold liquid. So I'm sure that there's got to be some flaws in there somewhere. Okay, it should be obvious if anything comes out of there. And a little extra water here to make sure I've got it full. Okay, yeah, it's dribbling right there. There, you can see there. After touching up that welding, it is now not leaking anywhere. Okay, that fits down in there really nicely. I'd like to test this out, but I am out of alcohol. I'm gonna run to the store and we'll give this a shot. Okay, I am back from the store. I got the alcohol. What? Oh no, this is for me. That's for the campfire. Okay, I don't remember how long he said that their Firestarter will burn. Obviously mine is considerably lower volume, but I think if I remember right on their website, they talk about being able to just start their thing and put regular firewood on it without even using kindling. I think I would still use smaller pieces, so I don't feel like I need as much burn time. I'm gonna run the stopwatch and we'll see how long this goes. Enjoy a little campfire in the driveway. This is inferior. Theirs is made out of stainless steel, whereas mine is just mild steel. If I had bought stainless steel, it would have been a lot more expensive. I don't know if they even had, this exact material in stainless. In any case, I don't have the ability to properly weld stainless steel, and so mine is gonna rust. Probably the biggest disadvantage of mine is that I had to make it. I burned an entire Saturday, so to speak. There are almost always ways to DIY, make your own, of just about any product that's out there, depending on how motivated you are. I'm not 100% sure that it's worth it. And perhaps someone who is a more skilled welder and better welding equipment than me could put it together quite a bit quicker than I did. And I've said it many times, I appreciate companies that try to innovate, bring new products to the market, solve problems, and that was part of why that particular product caught my eye. I do think it's potentially a good solution for a lot of people. And I feel a little bad turning around and sort of making my own version of it. But I knew it was going to come up in comments. I know some of you were going to say it. I could make that in my garage in 2 hours. So yeah, you're right. You could DIY it. It's a question of whether or not it's worth it to you to go to the trouble, figuring it all out, finding the material, spending the day putting it together. We are at 11, almost 12 minutes. Look at that. That is plenty of time to get a nice fire going. That is way, way, way longer than any of the sort of fire starter solutions that I typically use, like my little cotton pads that are soaked in Vaseline. Okay, there is barely flaming anymore. It is out 14 minutes. Now mine isn't quite as elegant as theirs, and as I said, this is made out of mild steel, so it's gonna rust. It's actually already starting to rust a little bit in there. So can you DIY it? Yeah, sure. Is it worth it? I don't think it was worth it to me to spend an entire day messing with this, but it can be done. So that finally brings all of my expo content to a close, and we'll be getting back into some travel content soon. In fact, I'm going to be on the road for the next 2 days. Summer is sort of my off season. I don't like to travel in the heat and the bugs. I've got some bigger, interesting trips planned for this fall. I'll put a link to the Spark Infinite Firestarter in the description below. Thank you for watching.